Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Talkback for the first digital production of No Theater's 23rd season. I'm producing artistic Andrew Hungerford, and we're here to talk about Feast by Megan Gogarty. And with me this evening are our director and our associate artist director, Tamara Winters,
Hi, everybody.
and our actor in the show, Jennifer Joplin. Jen, are you here?
I am.
Hooray! Well, welcome, you two. Welcome to our talkback. I don't normally run these talkbacks, so it's going to be a little freewheeling. Plus, I've got some whiskey. So here we go. So thank you both for being a part of this ongoing adventure of digital theater that we're all making together. And one of the first questions that I have is just because I know what it was like producing it for video, but what was it like actually being in the rehearsal room on camera? Like just yeah, what was that experience like?
I can get us going from the director's side of things. It was super weird. We had some things going for us though. Like first off, we were not running into as many internet difficulties as I was expecting us to. I actually moved into a new house like right before we started rehearsing, and our internet out here is way better than it was at our old place. So that took away a lot of my worries. And also Jen and I have worked together. So there was a little bit of like common language there for those of you who saw Girl in the Red Corner kicking off our season last year, which feels like 10,000 years ago at this point. Jen was in that show. We worked together. So we sort of had a vibe going already. And so we didn't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel there. But at the same time, this was not only my first time directing via Zoom. I did direct one of our Radio No shows via Zoom, but it's a little bit of a different animal. This is also the first time I've ever directed a solo show. So I was kind of inventing a lot of things for myself and my own technique and my own craft as we went along to try and make it work. But it actually, all this to say, it actually ended up being easier than I thought it was. It had its own new challenges, but it still, once we got into the rhythm of things, felt like a rehearsal. We did movement work. We did a lot of movement work, and Jen can probably talk about what that was like going through my movement director nonsense. We did, we had to stage it like a theater piece. We didn't shoot it like a film. We didn't storyboard. We didn't have a shot list or anything like that. We set up the camera and we looked at what I directed from the perspective of what you all saw in the audience. So the camera was where it would be when we recorded, and I directed it just like I would direct a show. It's just we weren't in the same room, and we could, I could duck upstairs and give my kid a snack on a break. Jen, what about you?
I am now suddenly on the busiest street in the middle of nowhere.
Amazing.
I might have to take you guys inside if this doesn't let up, but
we can hear you good though.
Okay, good. I think genuinely one of the strangest things was we started with the first read, and it started with one of the cardinal sins as an actor, because it was a Zoom reading and I didn't have anyone to look at but myself. So it was like I was acting with myself in a mirror, just looking at myself. And that was bizarre. And so by the time we got to the very first rehearsal after first read, having Tammy right now, your face right now, Tammy, is exactly my rehearsal experience, which was I could see my director going, oh, yes, yes. And getting visual cues from you was fantastic, as opposed to just looking at myself on a Zoom screen. So it was very bizarre, but honestly, Tammy and Megan and I, the three of us, we were making it as comfortable and as organic as possible. It was beautiful.
That's great. It is the being able to see yourself thing is the thing I was thinking about, because it's like being in being in an acting class in college when someone has forgotten to close the curtains over the mirrors for when it's a dance studio, and like how everyone just sort of, oh, is that what I look like? You know?
Yeah, God forbid that you would do this with a 28-year-old, not a 48-year-old. And when I see myself, I go, yeah, whatever. I seen you.
And I imagine there's something also pretty nice about having the immediate feedback of the director's face right there. Whereas sometimes in a rehearsal room, you know, when we're directing, we can lurk around or be sitting in a back row or be hiding far away. But there's no way to hide when you're on the video that's right there.
I'm very glad that my exceedingly expressive face was a gift to you and not a curse.
It was.
And this is a reminder to everyone watching that you can feel free to comment on the Facebook comment feed and ask some questions there. And we did have Dana House weighing in, saying that the process may have been bizarre, but it worked out beautifully. So
Thanks,
I agree.
Dana. Thanks for watching us in Jersey.
I will also say it was super interesting for me as a participant watching the rehearsal from afar, like when I would be sitting in for designer runs, and sometimes the internet would go out for a bit and who knows what end it was on, and it would skip ahead 30 seconds. I'd be like, I know what Jen probably did there. That's fine. I got it. So this piece, in being a riff on Beowulf, I'm just curious, and no shame either way. I'm just curious how familiar each of you were with the foundational text before starting this, with the story of Beowulf itself.
I studied it in 6th grade in California. It was part of our 6th grade curriculum. So we were slightly more advanced than the students that we reference in the script who read it in 10th grade.
Yes.
But then I did revisit it right before we, when we decided we were going to do this and that I was going to direct it. I thought maybe I should read it within the last 30 years. So I did read the Seamus Heaney translation right before we started. Found it surprisingly accessible, actually.
Yeah, there's something that I really appreciate about the Seamus Heaney one in the way that he approaches the poetry of it and not just the literal translatiness.
It's worth a read, folks.
That's right. Jen, how about you?
Yeah, I would have to double down on let's look at the poetry of this and the ability for something to reach beyond one period of time and still carry on beyond that. Yeah. That's actually why I love it so much, is that it is let's take what has lasted this long and let's turn it on its ear, because sometimes when something lasts that long, we don't question it anymore.
Yeah.
And so even a friend of mine is a English major, and I gave him the script and he was like, I can't read it until I reread Beowulf. And he knows Beowulf up one side and down the other, but he still wanted to reread it before looking at the script. A little bit. I didn't want to reread Beowulf more than I needed to, because that is not her story.
Yeah.
Within the first 5 minutes, you know that, yeah, I know what we're talking about. It's that story you read, but that's not the story. So,
And I think there's something so interesting about reconsidering sort of foundational texts from a different perspective. And because all of these, even these texts that have survived so long, are all written with a particular point of view. And what does it mean to look at that and reinterrogate it? And even we were talking about this, Tammy and I were talking about this the other day, even Seamus Heaney in his foreword of his text, as an Irish poet interpreting this Anglo-Saxon myth, a myth of people who conquered his people. and what is the in to sort of reclaim that and sort of find an anti-colonial vein to interpret it.
Yeah, the idea that she knows that there's been something written about her and her son, that has nothing to do with her story.
Yeah.
That's secondary completely, right?
Yeah. And it is also there's something really interesting in here as well about the who gets to write the history and who gets to interpret the stories, and the ability to uplift other voices to show, no, here's a piece of it you haven't considered. We have a question from KL Storer on the Facebook page. For you, Jen, was it nice to still be able to basically use a theater stage voice rather than a soundstage set voice?
Yes, absolutely. I do not like film and I don't like camera. I don't like it at all. And that was actually very hard to try and create this ultimate product, was that it was ultimately just me and my acting partner was a camera, which is not my favorite thing in the world. And to be given the opportunity to not hold back and realize that my loud voice and my soft voice and everywhere in between was going to be okay, because the technical team at No gave me everything that I needed. I was very delicately mic'd so that if I whisper something, that was okay. But if I yell something, it's not going to blow your eardrums out. It was actually beautiful to realize that I could be exactly who I am, which is way too big for film.
That was a really fun part of the rehearsal process too, was kind of, I think that middle week was all about dialing it in. The first week was all about getting into these words. Megan's words are so carefully crafted. And we joked that we could have sat at the table and broken this thing apart syllable by syllable for weeks, but we spent just a couple of days just really digging into that, and then just kind of getting the story in our bodies and getting the physical vocabulary. But then the second week was all about, like, once we had a roadmap of what this thing wanted to look like, it was all about like dialing in the intensity and dialing in her relationship to the camera, to the which by extension was her relationship to you, the viewer, at any given moment, and just kind of figuring, okay, like that, it felt like fine tuning a needle or something. It was a totally different mode of directing than I'm usually at that second week part, but it was really fun because it's a solo show and it's a not a long show. So even though we weren't doing like 8-hour rehearsals, we still it felt like we had time to find the nuance and the range here, which I think ultimately helped make it so much more successful, is that we could really figure out what this medium wants to do with a theater actor who has so much range.
And I will say, if I may, what was really weird was, in the realm of just a camera as my audience, and especially when we were filming, there was a moment where it got so quiet that I started to pull back, because you're used to getting some input from the audience. And if you're not getting any input from the audience, then you're not doing it right. So scale it back, quiet it down. And it took us a couple of goes for me to realize, just do it. Just fucking do it.
Yeah.
And we'll see where it goes. But that was the beauty of mixing these two mediums together, was that, yeah, it is theater, and yeah, it is in front of a camera.
Yeah. That touches out. I'm sorry, Andrew, I didn't mean to step on you there, but one of the things that Andrew and I have been trying to figure out as we plan this season that we sure hope to announce the rest of very soon when the ink dries on some contracts.
Surely we will.
But when we chose to open with this piece, and Megan just was game to do some rewrites to make it fit more specifically for the world of digital, as opposed to the original plan, which was an actual like dinner party setup in the space. One of the things we've been knocking our brains around about is, how do we make video feel like theater? How do we take it beyond what you're seeing right now, when we've seen really cool things via Zoom, and we've seen really good things about, just like archival video. We've certainly put out a lot of archival video since March, but how do we take it to the next level and make it feel that much more like the experience of coming to see a show in the atmosphere that you're used to? And I was not sure we were going to be successful, to be honest. I was like, I don't know, is this going to feel like a video, or is this going to feel like theater? And I'm really delighted that I think the combination of the script, the combination of the actor, the combination of the cool scenic elements we were able to employ, and I'm sure we'll touch on that in a second, and actual lighting rig, and actual theatrical lighting rig, Doug's amazing sound design that just like puts you right in the thick of it, makes something that people keep saying it feels like theater, so we must be doing something right.
And I think there's something, Jen, going back to, and this relates to both Tammy, your direction, and Jen, your performance, of the way that you do in fact treat the camera as the audience member. So the camera isn't an uninvolved observer. The camera really is the stand-in for the viewer in a way that I think doesn't happen very often in film. And so I think that the kind of direct address that can be built into that ended up being particularly compelling for me, at any rate. If we have a question from Andrea Adams. Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
Who asks, what was something you thought would be difficult in this process that turned out easy, and vice versa?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. Always busting my chops there, bud. I can say I knew I wanted to do a bunch of movement work because of the Megan talks in the script about how she moves just wrong, like a little wrong, like an alien that is doing an impression of what they think a human would move. Megan doesn't say that in the script. She says it much more eloquently than I do. But that idea of something she's presenting as human, but there are tells that tell you that she's other. And so I knew I wanted to do a bunch of movement work to kind of get at that and kind of peel back those habits that are just like, Jen, and discover, what are the habits that are her, the monster within. And I've run a lot of movement rehearsals in my life, but I've never done it at a distance. And so I dipped into the Viewpoints book, which is, my go-to, along with a bunch of other resources, and kind of got my head around, okay, I think this will work, and I think we'll try this, and we'll throw this at the wall. And actually it ended up working so much better than I thought it was going to. It really could be. And I think part of that is that Jen had such a great space to work in, that I could give an assignment. Essentially, I could say, hey, here's a thing to think about. Come back to me in 7 minutes and show me what you came up with. And it was we were able to do it and have it be so actor driven and actor motivated, which is why those physicalities feel so natural, is because they came from Jen's brain and Jen's body, not me putting something on top of it. So I thought that was going to be way harder with me not in the room, just because I'm used to pacing the room. And Andrew, you've been in a rehearsal. Andrea Adams, you've been in a rehearsal with me doing a movement rehearsal. I pace around the room and do my whole thing. So I was like, what do I do when I'm just sitting in a chair? But it ended up being way easier than I thought. You looked like you had one in that thought, Jen.
I just thought what was so interesting about the movement element of that was that you told me right off, you said, you don't have to be on camera. Take your time off camera to go work through what I'm challenging you to go do. And what's weird is, in a live rehearsal, I would never be like, excuse me, give me some space. Don't watch what I'm doing. that would be right there in the rehearsal space. But there is something so strange about somebody watching you all the time through camera. And it was necessary and really valid and valuable to be able to step out of that camera space to play, and to bring back physical ideas, as opposed to you and Megan going, yes, yes, what do you have? Yeah. I mean, that was very important. That was part of it, because, and I realized through the process that when I was disconnected to lines, when I was going up on lines, it was because I was not viewing the camera as people.
Mm-hmm.
When it's a void, when it's an absolute void, which is, me as a live theater actor, that's what I see a camera as naturally, is a void. That's when I was having my biggest problems. And when I realized that that is my connection to everyone and anyone, that's
cracked it wide open. Just cracked it wide open.
Yeah.
I will say the thing that was harder than I expected was in tech, the director, just the way our setup was, I had really no way to give direct input once we switched over to the filming camera. And so I was just sitting there watching things unfold and making notes and going like, in a room, I would just like quickly slip up there while they're doing a cue and just give a little thing and then just slip back into the darkness and we do our thing. And in the meantime, I'm just like, no one can see me. I can't talk to anyone. That was challenging on a personal level, but that's a me problem.
Let's not talk about me problems, Tammy.
Just from my perspective, real quickly to answer Andrew's question, one thing that ended up being both more difficult and easier for me than I anticipated was cueing all the lights in advance, just using a 3D visualizer. Because one, I first started by trying to use this visualizer that's built into this very expensive drafting software that I own, which I will not name. And that was a mess. And I started doing it, and I lulled myself into a false sense of security the first time I was able to like click buttons on my virtual light board and turn lights on. I was like, great, I solved it. And then when I actually started queuing, I was like, oh no, I did not, nothing is working. Oh no. And then I was very fortunate that I was able to get onto the beta test of a software version from ETC, which is the company that makes our light board. And they have an incredible piece of software that is still in beta, so I can't really talk about, but it is what made this show possible, because it allowed me to write the light cues on my computer. And then as I don't know if you could tell, Jen, but then once we got to tech, we actually did we did a little tweaking, but a lot of it was just like, that was just done how it was. And so that was kind of amazing and mind-blowing for me, just from the perspective of the theatrical designer.
Yeah. Me as well. I thought Tech Weekend meant that I was not going to be filmed because we would be too busy teching.
Sure. Ha, fooled you.
And that's where we get the fly.
Amazing.
You mean your co-star?
Exactly. The cameo. Yeah.
We do have a question from Dana in the chat, and it is Tammy. Dana knows you had personal changes during all of this. How did you find the time to work? Is the question.
I don't know, man. Let's see, I got a 2-year-old. So for the last 2 years, I've been pretty much become an expert in just finding time to do things. Yes, we moved, we bought a house, we moved houses, my, toddler goes on, my mother-in-law lives with us. There was a lot of big good things, a little hectic. I would say get you a partner if you can, who packs up the house for you while you're directing a show. So many props to Dan Winters. I think this whole production is one that deserves a salute to supportive partners, because we definitely could not have done this without one Jason Sheldon, who really was our, what did we call his official title?
On-site technical support.
Yes, that does not really give us even a semblance of the scope of what he put into this. So
as with many titles in the theater, it doesn't really encompass
really scratch the surface.
Everything. Yeah. Well, we're at about we've been chatting for around 25 minutes, which is around the time that we usually do. So we've got a couple minutes to wrap things up. Is there anything else either of you would just like to add about the experience?
I have one really quick thing. I'll make it very quick. So this should have been an absolute disaster. Because honestly, as an actor, as somebody in this business right now, it is a disaster, and you don't know what's happening next, and you don't have your footing at all. This was a great gift of remembering how we do this at the core of it. It doesn't need a stage. It doesn't need anything that we think it usually needs, a dressing room. Even it doesn't need the things that you think it needs. It needs people dedicated to it, who are excited about creating something new and fantastic, and
a great story to tell.
Absolutely. And so I'm just so very thankful. So
here
to all of you.
Thanks, Jen. Tammy, any last thoughts?
It's hard to top that. I agree. This was a gift. Andrew and I first read this script, like a year and a half ago in its first incarnation. And we've been trying to figure out where and how to do it ever since then. And timing didn't work out last year. We knew we wanted Jen to be a part of it, and it just didn't work. And so we were like, well, we could get someone else, or we could do it the way we want to do it with Jen when she's available. And then the world did what the world has been doing. And suddenly an opportunity presented itself, because this was the script that really rose to the top when we were like, what the hell are we going to do to kick off our new season? And so we talked to Megan, and she was super game to rewrite. And I couldn't be more grateful that we hung on to this, because I think the original vision of this script would have been really, really cool. But I think this is the show we needed right now. So thank you, Megan, for writing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I want to say thank you both for making a show that we're all really proud of. And thank you to Megan for writing it. Thank you to our whole tech team at No Theater. And of course, Kayla, who is running the console for us right now at the command center at the No, making this talkback happen.
I also made the heart.
Oh, and yes, and our props designer, some genius props. There is a thing that happens, and there is a moment when eagle-eyed viewers will notice that a dish fills with blood of its own volition, which is a little thing that is like makes me so happy it happened, even if only a handful of people catch it, or if it's the kind of thing that people don't believe really happened. It's just a little bit of the magic. And I also want to quickly say as thank you. This is part of our Play Underground series, which is sponsored by Joe Mock and the Real Pro team.
At Cutler Real Estate.
At Cutler Real Estate. So thanks to Joe for that, for making these post-show events possible. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in and for watching the show. And please tell everybody you know, so we can share this with even more people. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, Tammy and Jen. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.